meer as die mooiste mooi vir my. Tot in jou vlaktes waar ek al my drome kry. Tot in jou berge, jou riviere, waterstrome, bekoor jy my. Ek kan vir altyd net hier na jou skoonheid staan. Want waar het ek ooit so iets gewaar? Jy's beautiful verby vir my, dis hier by jou waar ek wil bly. Suid-Afrika, jy's my mooiste land. Suid-Afrika, ja dis jy wat my dra, maar wat het geword van ons reënboognasie, wat hande so vat en saam so staan. Suid-Afrika, ja ons sien in die trane. Suid-Afrika, wat rol jou wange, wanneer sal ons leer dat ons mense, ons maak jou sien. Daar is so baie wat ek jou wil vra, gaan ons betaal vir die letsels wat jy dra. Ek weet die plan was nooit ons so moet beklui my land, maar sê vir my. Ek weet dis baie lang om die moes verby. Jou kop al zwaar my land, maar sê toch net vir my. Wat kan van jou word my land? Suid-Afrika, jy's my mooiste land. Suid-Afrika, ja dis jy wat my dra, maar wat het geword van ons reënboognasie, wat hande so vat en saam so staan. Suid-Afrika, ja ons sien in die trane. Suid-Afrika, wat rol oor jou wange, wanneer sal ons leer dat ons mense, ons maak jou sien. Dit is tyd dat ons moet hande vat en op ons knieën neerval en vrouwe God, kom red ons land. Suid-Afrika, jy's my mooiste land. Suid-Afrika, ja dis jy wat my dra, maar wat het geword van ons reënboognasie, wat hande so vat en saam so staan. Suid-Afrika, ja ons sien in die trane. Suid-Afrika, wat rol oor jou wange, wanneer sal ons leer dat ons mense, ons maak jou sien. Wanneer sal ons leer dat ons mense, ons maak jou sien. Suid-Afrika.
Hello folks, and welcome back to Chris Wyatt Reports. It's Monday, December 16th, 2024. Geloftedag, the day of vow, the day of the covenant. In the modern sense, identified as Day of Reconciliation, a date which is losing its relevance to South Africans as days pass, as years pass in our rearview mirror. We're going to talk a little bit about today about the origins of the day, why it came about, what it's about, and the sense of historical loss for all South Africans, black, white, and brown, as we go forward. South Africans, black, white. So with that in mind, let me just go ahead and begin my conversation. This will be supplemented with photographs from the site of the date that set this origin in place, the origin of this date. 16th December is a date etched in the history of South Africans. Geloftedag, the day of the vow, the covenant, Dingani's Day, Reconciliation Day. December 16th has long been etched in the collective memory of South Africans. As we travel further and further along and the sands of time slip through the hourglass, far too many South Africans of all races and creeds lose touch with their history and their heritage. December 16th becomes a day off from work, an occasion for a braai or relaxing, and less about what South Africa was, what it is, and what it will become. The agonizing loss of identity that comes with emigration has already dawned on those who departed South Africa over the past 3 decades. But the loss and sense of history, sadly, goes much deeper. Inside Africa, Mzansi, South Africans are losing touch of who they are, in large measure owing to the largely uncontested whitewashing of history by an increasingly black supremacy-oriented voting bloc of the ANC and the Progressive Alliance of MK, EFF, and even ATM, among others. Political parties not interested in peaceful coexistence, but rather in domination and retribution for perceived past injustices. The General Synod of the Afrikaners Natal Churches chose 16 December as an ecclesiastical day of thanksgiving by all its congregations in 1864. Later, in 1894, Dingani's Day was declared a public holiday by the government of the Orange Free State. Declared a public holiday in 1910 after the establishment of the Union of South Africa, the event that was marked was the Battle of Nkombe, or Blood River, as the Voortrekkers called it after their triumph. For the Boers, according to historian John Laband, previous guest on my program, their great God-given victory affirmed their right to rule over the heathen Zulu, just as God had delivered the Canaanites into the hands of the children of Israel. The Covenant and Blood River duly became cornerstones of Afrikaner nationalism. Although it was known officially either as the Day of the Vow or the Day of the Covenant, December 16th was popularly known as Dingani's Day, invoking the name of the second Zulu king, Dingani ka Senzekakona, against whom the Voortrekkers fought at Nkombe, or Blood River. The battle pitted the Zulu army under the joint command of Ndela ka Sampisi and Zobo ka Sabadli against the Voortrekker commando under the leadership of Andries Pretorius. Just a week before the decisive battle, Pretorius' party made a vow to God that should they win against the Zulu army, they and their descendants would observe the day of victory as a religious holiday and build a church in commemoration. Their wish was fulfilled when they defeated the Zulu army at Blood River on the 16th of December, 1838. On that day, an estimated 20,000 Zulu warriors led by Dingani's generals Dambuzo Nzobo and Ndela ka Sampisi attacked about 470 Voortrekkers at dawn. With the advantage of gunpowder, Zulu warriors were repelled with an estimated 3,000 to 10,000 warriors killed. The blood of the casualties flowed into the Nkombe River, turning its water red, earning it the nickname Blood River. The confrontation between Voortrekkers and Zulu regiments became known as the Battle of Blood River. December 16th remained a rallying point for the development of Afrikaner nationalism, culture, and identity. However, with the advent of apartheid, in 1952, the day was changed to Day of Covenant. After the first democratic elections in 1994, December 16th continued to form part of the history of post-apartheid South Africa. On December 16, 1995, the name was changed once more and was celebrated as a public holiday known as the Day of Reconciliation. The establishment of December 16th as a public holiday was an attempt to strike a balance between a divided past and promoting national unity and reconciliation in a new political dispensation. In the 1910s and 1920s, Selope Themba, the second Secretary General of the African National Congress, published numerous articles challenging the portrayal of Dingani as a backward brute who senselessly ordered the assassination of Piet Retief and his party. While not denying that Dingani ordered the killing of Retief, Themba argued that he was no different from European empire builders who had also killed people in pursuit of their political projects. Whataboutism. Nothing more. There's zero doubt as to the historical or homicidal nature of either Dingani or the brother whom he murdered, Shaka. What others did or did not do does not obviate their foul deeds. It does, however, deserve context. Yes, in the historical context, Dingani and Shaka are far from the only bloodthirsty despots, and yes, some of them have been white. But both Shaka and Dingani were particularly nasty tyrants who deserve their reputation as murderous, duplicitous thugs. Dingani's Day took a particular political significance in the liberation struggle for black South Africans. It was an opportunity to protest white supremacy and domination. Now, the date has been romanticized not only by the ruling Afrikaner minority under apartheid, but also by the African National Congress, which chose the date to found its armed struggle. Umkhonto we Sizwe was established on December 16, 1961. That was no accident. That was intentional. In his autobiography, The Long Walk to Freedom, Nelson Mandela wrote the following: Afrikaners celebrated December 16th as a triumph of the Afrikaner over the African and the demonstration that God was on their side. While Africans mourn this day of the massacre of their people, we chose December 16th to show that the African had only begun to fight and that we had righteousness and dynamite on our side. Now, the problem with Madiba's statement is that it's incorrect. The Battle of Blood River was not a massacre of their people. It was a pitched battle, one fought fairly by both sides. It was a media engagement where both sides had sought a decisive battle to gain advantage over the other. The Boers to seek revenge for Dingani's betrayal of Piet Retief and to gain land. The Zulus sought to exterminate the Boer column and dissuade others from entering Dingani's domain. In calling it Reconciliation Day, they were drawing from the well of Temba, the ANC that is, who in 1932 and 1933 issued a clarion call for renaming of Dingani's Day as Reconciliation Day. 1932, and it occurred in 1994. For him, it was only in purging Dingani's Day of what he considered its racialist past that the antagonism could be overcome. Well, in fact, just the opposite has happened. Now, fervor for the day would on the surface appear to be losing its significance, with many Afrikaner and Boers as history slips away from them. Political control can accomplish quite a lot to ensure enduring memories and legacies. Majority rule has led to a whitewashing of history, with neglect for the Afrikaner and Boer sides of history. 21st century offspring of many Afrikaner and Boer families are losing touch with their heritage, while virtually everything the ANC, EFF, MK, or Action SA say is entrenched in racial hatred, not reconciliation. Only 11% of white matriculants take the history exam on exit from high school. This is understandable, as the course in South Africa's courses are all too often little more than black supremacist narratives rather than balanced objective history lessons. Who wants to be told they are evil every day in school, especially when the student is not evil? The Day of Reconciliation is a public holiday in South Africa held annually on December 16th. The holiday came into effect in 1995 after the end of apartheid with the intention of fostering reconciliation and national unity for the country. Recognizing the need for racial harmony, the government chose the date for its significance to both Afrikaner and black South African cultures. The celebration of the Day of Reconciliation can take the form of remembering past history, recognizing veterans' contributions, marching, and other festivities. But when they say veterans, they're not talking about genuine veterans of conflict, not veterans of the South African Defense Force, black, white, and brown. They are talking about something entirely else. Not the genuine veterans of the struggle era, nor those Bantustan veterans from the Transkei, Ciskei, and Botswana, and others. They're talking about the pretend strap hangers, the fake stolen valor MK pretenders. Yes, there were a few thousand genuine Mkhonto we Sizwe veterans in Angola, many of them killed Quattro, and a handful of MK terrorists operating in South African soil, but not the 100,000 plus who claim MK status with stolen valor. When apartheid ended, it was decided to keep December 16th as a public holiday, as I said, but to infuse it with the purpose of fostering reconciliation and national unity. It was established by the government in 1994. Nelson Mandela was part of the group of politicians that helped start the idea for the holiday, the same man who started the terrorist group in 1961. On the 16th of December, 1995, the first celebration took place. Also, that was the first meeting of the South African Truth and Reconciliation Commission on December 16th, 1995. In an address in 1995, Archbishop Desmond Tutu described the holiday as serving the need of healing the wounds of apartheid. If only that were true. The holiday is also used to celebrate minority cultural groups in South Africa, such as the San people. In 2009, President Jacob Zuma also stressed that the holiday was meant to promote non-sexism. I'm sorry. Seriously? Celebrating the San, while the ANC ignores the Khoi and San and does nothing to ensure the survival of their languages or their cultural groups? Jacob Zuma stressing non-sexism? I think I've heard it all now. Now, each year has a different theme for the Day of Reconciliation. For example, in 2013, nation building, social cohesion, and reconciliation were the themes. Wow, how's that nation building going? Social cohesion? 2016 was bridging the divide towards a non-racist society. Yet we've seen the rise of parties focused almost entirely on racial retribution. MK, EFF, ATM, and arguably even action essay these days. 2019 was the year of indigenous languages, supporting national reconciliation through the promotion, development, and preservation of indigenous languages. Yet New is about to go extinct with the final first language speaker in her late 80s. What has the ANC done to protect indigenous languages? Nothing. South Africa has traveled a long distance since Ngani's betrayal. So many black, white, and brown South Africans have died in conflict, battle fostered by political leaders seeking fame, fortune, or self-aggrandizement on the soil of South Africa. Genoeg is genoeg. Enough is enough. Grow up, live and work in peace. If harmony is out of reach, at least don't kill each other and don't oppress another group. Enough of the nonsense. It's time for South Africa to mature and become a proper state in the 21st century. Not a white supremacist, not a black supremacist, not a majority oppressing a minority, not a minority oppressing a majority, but a balanced, fair state in which all South Africans, black, white, and brown, Christian, Muslim, Jew, can live and worship in peace and harmony. And that's my opening statement. It's a rather long one. I hope it didn't bore folks, but welcome on the 16th December, a public holiday in South Africa. At the outset, Val was with us. Hendo's here, James Bowie, Gus, Emil Therrett, Richard Kuhn, G. Sawyer, Hakan Engman in from the Netherlands. Meerkat is back with us. Garrett Gilligan from Somerset West. Yes, they are eating the dogs. They are eating the cats. Well, the Kifness just hopped onto it. Everyone else did before the Kifness. Who else got the Brett says Dingani ruled the same as Shaka. He was a bloodthirsty tyrant. That's correct. Yep, that's a bloodthirsty tyrant. Gabrielle in from Switzerland. Very interesting subject today. Thank you. You're welcome. Yeah, they brought us guys to a gunfight. That's not a good idea. There were 100 Christian Zulus fighting with the Boers on the day. Also about 300 people of color. I'm not sure about that. There were 470 total. So I'm not sure where you get your numbers. That's where ketchup comes from. Is America expropriated? Huh? What are you talking about, Francois van der Westhuizen? Not enough in Angola. We were asked to stop. Huh? Look at what Zuma is doing today. Who is reconciliation? Exactly. It's a farce, Meerkat, and I'm going to talk about that. Brett Sessoms gave a $2 super chat. Thank you for that. I don't know the facts on that. John LeBan would be the guy to ask. I've been trying to reach him for another interview, but I've been unsuccessful. Liam R says, Chris, thank you for contacting Margaret. Okay, it's done. I hope that she's got the information she needs. By the way, so my apologies to Leah. I had intended to send her 10,000 Rand, and I took sufficient dollars for 10,000 Rand. However, MoneyGram, greedy bastards, took a very poor exchange rate. It was under 17, and it wound up being 9,005 Rand. So it replaces the 9,000 she had, but I thought we'd have a nice Christmas present, a little bit extra. So she has now gotten that money sent to her. Yeah, a rapist promoting non-sexism. That's funny. There were Bantustans. John Jarvis asking if Brett could not interject himself. Well, that's a fair question, John, but please don't stop the super chats, Brett. Yeah. Okay. Hello, Carlos Mango. How you doing? I have not seen John LeBan's latest book. There were Basuto and Khoisan. Oh, yes. There's no doubt about that. Just the numbers. There were 470 total, and someone said there were 300 Khoisan. And there's no way there were 300 Khoisan at the Battle of Blood River fighting for the Boers. There's a lot of white guys there. Let's talk a little bit about what's going on today on Reconciliation Day. Well, first off, the MK Party, Umkhonto Sizwe, a party of cultural appropriation, having stole the name from the ANC's Armed Wing. Armed Wing, that's a funny joke. More like a terrorist organization. But Umkhonto Sizwe's Stolen Valor, a political party stealing that name and even copying the symbols of the party, trying to log on to something that they have no contact with. Yes, Jacob Zuma is an MK veteran. He was the head of intelligence and a murderous thug there. Yep, he was in fact with them. So let's talk about this. Close something here. So MK holds its first anniversary party at Moses Madiba Stadium in Durban over the weekend. And what happens? What happens? Well, he calls on black unity, excluding white South Africans, and taking back what is ours, a threat to violence, well, through elections in 2029. MK Party failed to fill up Moses Madiba Stadium for its one-year anniversary, but former President Zuma was confident the party could resolve its challenges and win a two-thirds majority in 2029. At the moment, I don't think that's remotely possible. This is not a real party. It's a vanity project. But we shall see. There's plenty of time for this party to become organized and plenty of sentiment against the African National Congress, a party that Jacob Zuma is desperate to be part of, but he betrayed. And he calls for black unity to the exclusion of white South Africans. That is not reconciliation. That is not reconciliation. That is exclusion. Brett says it was fun that Ramaphosa praised Dingane in one reconciliation. KZN erupted and said, stop, that Dingane was evil. Thank you for the $5 super chat, Brett. Faraday Schultz, hello to you. And who else we got there? Edna Fauri is back, says, hello, Chris and Buddy. Geloftedag. Well, thank you for the greetings. The EFF is also out with its race hustling. We are going in. Malema awaits the DA's GNU exit. So he's waiting for the DA to leave the Government of National Unity, and then he will go in. Once Helen Zille is out, Siyangene, Joseph Malema announced. He said this party is ready to form a Government of National Unity with the ANC should the Democratic Alliance leave. He made his remarks in closing speech at the party's third elective conference. Why would you care about whether the DA leaves? What are you so demonically possessed about the Democratic Alliance? What has he done that you are opposed to? He offers nothing except his rank racial hatred, which is just political posturing. I don't really think that Julius Malema is a racist. I don't think he's bright enough to be a racist. I think he's just a political opportunist. But his party is collapsing, and he's reaching and grasping for straws. The African National Congress has no interest in the under 10% EFF. It doesn't need the under 10% EFF. Goodbye. Goodbye. Well, this year's theme for Reconciliation Day, the Day of the Vow, Geloftedag, Dingane's Day, is healing historical wounds and forging new futures. If only that were the case. That is not what the government is doing. President Ramaphosa gave a speech about Reconciliation Day, not on Reconciliation Day, but on the 14th of December. Yes. Well, actually, I'm sorry, he gave it today. Yeah, he says we need to come to terms. Well, this is a op-ed from Bongani Ngulungu, who says that we need to come to terms with the Day of Reconciliation's contested history. Well, you can do that, but black South Africans have appropriated the day when they celebrate it as a day of struggle. What they should do is celebrate it, Zulu, as a day that they were crushed in battle. They should do that. I found an interesting article from Time magazine dated December 26, 1949. A kind of story that goes back and forth, objective and not objective, about the date. Time magazine, 1949, on Dingane's Day. Dingane, the vulture, was one of the darkest, Africa's crudest black despots. In 1838, a column of 600 Boers in white-covered wagons was trekking northward from the Cape Colony into Natal. The bearded foretrekkers, who wanted to get away from the hated British and find new homes in the Zulu domain, asked Dingane to give them land. The vulture agreed if the foretrekkers would first recover some cattle stolen from him by a hostile tribe. The Boers did so, and when they went to seal the bargain at a great feast in Dingane's kraal, they left their weapons outside because it was told that they were an insult to bring that in with the king. At the height of the festivity, after a tumultuous war dance, Dingane's Zulus fell upon the Boers, dragging them to the hill of execution, beat them to death with knob carries, and they did it in order so that Pete Retief could watch all of them murdered before he was killed, including his son. And then they went and attacked the settler columns at Wienen and Blaukrans. Dingane's treachery was soon punished. Later that year, on the 16th of December, on the banks of Natal's Nkombe River, or Blood River as it's known today, another four-tracker column led by Boer leader Andreas Pretorius, for whom the capital is named after, bloodily defeated Dingane's plume-decked Asagi-hurling horde of 12,000 Zulus. More than 3,000 perished. The Boers resolved ever after to celebrate the day as a day of thanksgiving. Yeah. Well, 1949, Black Fear. Last week, on the 111th anniversary of the Blood River Battle, the Thanksgiving Day turned into a raucous demonstration of Boer chauvinism. Prime Minister Daniel Malan's nationalist government formally dedicated a new monument to the four trekkers, a massive, brooding granite tabernacle on the boulder-strewn veld near Pretoria. South Africa's 8 million black people were excluded from all celebrations for days before the actual dedication ceremonies. While bonfires blazed in the hilltops around Pretoria, frantic rumors had swept the wretched native settlements that the white men were bent on bloody sequel to the Battle of Blood River, that they would go forth on Dingani's Day to slay black men, women, and children. The government broadcast special messages to allay their fears. On the great day, there was no violence, but plenty of noise. Trains, buses, autos, and old-style ox wagons poured 250,000 South Africans onto the scene. The city of 5,000 tents had been built to shelter part of the crowd. Many were dressed in four-trekker garb, the men in cowhide or corduroys with feathered slouch hats, powder horns, and bushy beards, which they had carefully grown during the past year. The women in flowing dresses and tight kappies. Those are sunbonnets. More than 700 people fainted in the broiling sun, but swarms of sightseers climbed the monument steps to gaze reverently at the bas reliefs of four-trekker heroes and other figures in South African history. At noon, a shaft of sunlight fell through an opening in the monument's dome upon the words, Ons vir jou, Suid-Afrika, engraved on an altar 130 feet below. The crowd watched in solemn silence while organs played at last moment throughout the land. Bells pealed from every tower and village belfry. White light, then the speeches started. Their main theme, only the Afrikaner carry the white light of Christendom into the black heart of Africa. All but lost in the strident Afrikaner outburst was the calmer voice of former Prime Minister Jan Christian Smuts, who pleaded, "Let this monument be of our genesis be a symbol not only of the past, but of our reconciliation." Judge Newton Thompson bluntly spoke for South Africans of British descent. "If you want our country to flourish and be happy, then you must take us with you, not as your subordinates, but as your equals at your side." It ran in the family. Dingani's brother and predecessor, the frightful Chief Shaka, slaughtered an estimated 1 million fellow blacks in genocidal wars. He liquidated women as useless, mourned his mother's death by killing 7,000 followers, and was himself murdered by Dingani. Time magazine, 1949. 1949. Well, in 2020, Mike Salumba wrote an op-ed in the Times and said that it's a celebration of South Africa's make-believe reconciliation. And he's spot on. The only time South Africans are reconciled is when the Springboks win. Aside from that, there is no reconciliation for many South Africans. And mostly I'm talking about the political leaders who lead South Africa. Now I'm going to take you on an image journey. Okay, so let's see if I can get this to work properly. There we go. You bring this over here. Get it up. All righty. So this is what the four trekkers faced at the Battle of Blood River on the banks of the Nkombe on the 16th of December, 1860. Excuse me, 1838. 60, where did 60 come from? 1838. This is what they faced. Zulu warriors with knob carries and assegais approaching them. It's a sketch drawn of the battle site, although that doesn't look historically accurate, to be honest. And this is what it was all about, the pact they made with God. Hier staan voor ons voor die heilige God van hemel en aarde een gelofte aan hom te doen, dat is hij ons zal beschermen en ons vanaf. I'm butchering the Afrikaans, so I will stop it there. This is the vow made to God, should he deliver them in their forthcoming battle with the Zulu, a battle that both sides sought and both sides engaged. Nearly two centuries later, 3 decades after the end of racial segregation and a democratic dispensation, major political leaders do this. They promote black supremacy and the exclusion of white and brown South Africans from the political dispensation. The 1-year anniversary of the fake party Stolen Valor Umkhonto we Sizwe of Jacob Zuma, a vanity project hell-bent on self-aggrandizement and pilfering the state coffers. This party exists for retribution, nothing else. So let's take a look at how important Reconciliation Day is to the politicians of South Africa. and to the media of South Africa. Today should be a day similar to the 4th of July in America, our Independence Day. And it is in some respects. People don't remember that that's why they have the day off. That's why it's a holiday, because it was the day we declared our independence from the British Empire and then fought for it. Yet Americans all too often see the 4th of July as a day to put their obese, disgusting, hideous-looking bodies in skimpy bikinis and bathing shorts and go like beached whales out to the shore. Disgusting sight. Or for barbecues, since we don't do braais. Or just to relax and have fun. And while all of that's welcome to be part of the 4th of July, the 4th of July is meant to be the day we celebrate, the day we won our independence. One of the most important dates in human history. In South Africa, the Day of the Vow, or the Day Reconciliation Day, however you celebrate it, should be a sacred holiday as well. But it is also rapidly becoming a commercialized day off, a day to braai, a day to do nothing. And look at the media. The Day of Reconciliation, the most important holiday in the year on the calendar in South Africa for black, white, and brown. And not a single major news outlet in South Africa is carrying the lead story of the day. The Times says that Ramaphosa will finally hold the promised national dialogue sometime next year. Another liar. Not one mention on their above the fold of Geloftedag. News 24, South Africa's favorite propaganda outlet. Ramaphosa talks about the national dialogue. Not a single story anywhere on the site about the Day of Reconciliation. IOL, the toilet paper of record. We are going in. Malema awaits DA's GNU exit to join. Not a single thing about Geloftedag. However, the Daily Maverick does talk about the day, but not in the sense we expect. Zuma calls on a half-full stadium of MK supporters to build black unity and take back what is ours in 2029. This was Ubuntu. This was a compromise symbol, including colors that represented all groups of South Africa, replacing the Union flag. But unity has all but escaped South Africans. This is this year's symbol, healing historical wounds. What a crock. Absolute crock. This was the crowd in 2020 at the Voortrekker Monument commemorating Geloftedag. 30,000 people showed up that day. This was a symbol that many South Africans looked to in the 1990s. F.W. de Klerk and Nelson Mandela raising their hands up, holding hands in a sign of unity, which the ANC has destroyed. This is a sketch of the Battle of Blood River, very inaccurate, as there is no bluff immediately behind those wagons. Not a single bluff. But that is a sketch of the battle. This is a more accurate symbol of that battle. This drawing here of the wagons circled by Zulu. This is the entrance, which is a private monument. It is not something the government maintains anymore. It's done through private efforts. Blood River and Vereenigingsteren, the 16th December, 1838. This is the entrance to the site. These are the wagon replicas made out of bronze at the site, in careful detail replicating approximately the exact location of where the battle took place. And on the far side, you can see the Zulu monument in the left-hand side of the distance. That's the inside of one of the bronze replica. That shows you the pioneering spirit of the people who ventured out from the Cape into the unknown to those in these wagons. Those leading often knew because they had scouts, but who negotiated with groups ahead of them. This is one of the handful of cannon that they supposedly had. These are incredible replicas. You can see this battle site. You can see for a great distance. faithfully replicated. Hey, who's that stunningly handsome young man? In that direction, I'm pointing out was Blood River, very close in between the wagons and the Zulu monument. You can see that it was quite an encirclement, this lager. There's the hill in the distance, not right up next to the site. It was windy the day that I was there for filming this. Hello, folks. This is Chris in KwaZulu-Natal in South Africa, at the site of a momentous battle that took place here on the 16th of December, 1838. As the Voortrekkers, a group of the descendants of the original European settlers in the Western Cape, the Dutch, the French Huguenots, and the Germans who came later, along with some others, migrated up away from what was then the Cape Colony into the Orange Free State, over the Drakensberg Mountains, down here into KwaZulu-Natal, where they ran into conflict with the Zulu who happened to occupy this area. After a number of events that took place, which takes a little getting into, we're not going to cover that here right now, King Dingane had sent his troops out to meet a Voortrekker army that had assembled here. They came here in the Kombe River, subsequently known as Blood River, as a consequence of this battle. 464 Trek Boers fought at least 16,000 Zulu. Both sides entered this battle well aware of what was at stake and what was going on. The Trek Boers, believing that they were the vanguard of Christianity and representatives of God, made a pact, a covenant with God, that if he would give them a great victory against the Zulu in retribution for what had happened to Pete Retief and others, and Veenen, if he would give them a great victory, they would take a vow and they would build a church in his honor, and they would celebrate that day as a day of Thanksgiving each and every year. So they took this vow, and building up to the date of the battle. And on the 16th of December, Zulu met here at Nkombe River, which became known as Blood River, as 464 Boers formed a lager with a circle of wagons. You can see the distance there. That's a life-size replica of the actual oxen-driven wagons that the Trek Boer were using. They circled their wagons, the cattle inside, and they put defensive positions all around, and they fought off the Zulu and won an epic battle here. As many as 10,000 Zulu may have perished here. Numbers are unclear. So many Zulu died that they fell into the river, and it was known as the Blood River because there was so much blood there from the casualties. This site is not a political site. I don't know how people want to view it that way, but a site where both Zulu and Afrikaners can look back and reflect on their history. And in fact, there's a bridge of reconciliation behind the camera, just down here from the Zulu Museum on that side of the river to the monument that's set up over here by the National Party or private individuals later on. So there you go, folks. 16th December 1838, an epic battle in the history of South Africa, one which many people seem to have forgotten about or choose not to pay much attention to these days. But it was a crucible in the forming of the Afrikaner identity and also a key event in the history of the Zulu Empire. Thanks for watching, folks. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed that. That was recorded in January of 2023, about a year, almost 2 years ago. Wow, when I was there at that location. Yeah, what a fascinating site, what a fascinating battle, and it is key, central to the identity of the Afrikaner identity that formed in South Africa, an identity that's under threat today. So this is some more imagery. That's the Zulu History Monument, which has been neglected. Not a single person was sitting around when I was there. It was opened up, but no one was there. There's supposed to be people there watching the place. I walked everywhere throughout the buildings, and not a single person. They were all unprotected and open and ignored. My previous visits, there had actually been people there. These are replicas of the shields, the cowhide shields that the Zulu warriors carried, which don't stop bullets, by the way. A view from across the river. This is from the Zulu side. That's what this is, the alternative or other side of the history. You can see a Zulu warrior there being depicted carrying a knob carry. Those are bloody deadly. Those things are hard as a rock and will crack a skull open. And that's what they were used for. The Reconciliation Bridge was constructed over the Nkombe River as a symbol of reconciliation between the Zulu and the Boer. What's nice about the bridge is it facilitates travel from one side of the river to the other, which is a fast-moving river. It doesn't look like a lot, but it's quite deep and that's moving quite fast. You can see all the mud in it from carrying soil down. It hasn't even been raining. So you can imagine how much blood it must have taken to turn that into Blood River. Here you can get a sense of the wind. The banks on the left-hand side are what the Zulu had to climb up to get into the battle. And further down behind where I took the photograph from the bridge are a collection of reeds, which became the death zone for many Zulu warriors who were trapped there and died in the reeds. This is from the other side. You can see the Zulu side was approachable, but here very difficult to get up the banks. Muddy, wet, slippery, blood, casualties, dead bodies in front of you. Difficult spot to climb up. There's an image of it. You can see the countryside there in Natal. Just amazing. And that's your sign coming in from the Zulu side to the Afrikaner side, the Boer. This is a replica of the victory on the 16th December, 1838 at the museum there. Oh, there's my hire over there. No, that's not my hire. That's somebody driving in. Whoops. And there's the battle again. Yeah, so I've been to the site a number of times as a historian. And I just wanted to share that with you. So, yeah, let me catch up on the chat over here, and then I'll also update what's going on in the story. So I did get Brett's super chat. Thank you for that, Brett. Johan Nell says 35 attendance at the 4-tracker monument today. Well, that's nice, Johan. But when the monument was dedicated in 1938, there were 250,000 people present. There were only like 1.8 million, if that, 1.6 million, maybe 1.5 million Afrikaners and Boers, and 250,000 rocked up in 1938 for the centenary. Wow. Wow. And today, 35,000 show up. Allison's here. Chris Ehlers, Vilma Rasmus, Garrett Gillich, Johan Nell, Carlos Mangsveld. School teachers took us to see the area with much rhetoric and history as a lesson. Tony Nage is in. How's Tony going there? Not all of us, my dad and I watched The Patriot every 4th of July. My mom did too before the Lord called her. Yeah, it's a decent film. Brett Sessoms, John says that The Patriot was historically and factually flawed. Well, it's a Hollywood film. What do you expect? It wasn't a documentary, John. Liam and R, me and my family still keep the Geloftedag by going to church. They made a promise to keep the day. That's what it's supposed to be, yep. Chris went to church. It's the right place to be. George was at the 4-tracker monument today, 35,000. All right, George, that was awesome. Would love to have been there. Geloftedag is to Boers what Sharpeville is to black folk, historical, and should be viewed as such. The regime wants a wipe history. Yep, exactly. Faraday Schultz gave a 99 Rand super chat, which I missed during my monologue. Yep, Vilma Rasmus. Allison Johnson gave a 35 Rand super chat. Says, thank you. This is really interesting. Well, there you go, Allison. You're welcome. It's my pleasure. I have to do this because as a historian, I owe it to folks. You got to pay it forward. In South Africa, so few people are paying attention to history. So few people. And the people that tend to pay attention to history are really oftentimes, some of them, polarized on this side or that side, which is not particularly helpful when you're trying to come together. Leon Terblanche says, such a shame. It is. Mirakat says, presume you know what Masepa means. Well, whether I know or not, the audience may not know, so feel free to share it, Mirakat. Limited number of visitors to the monument is only due to black criminals on the roads, says Chris. Okay. So black criminals on the road kept 215,000 people from attending today? Come on, Chris. Yes, if what your point is that it's unsafe to drive, I'll accept that. But I've driven there in the daytime when there weren't 35,000 people to watch my back. It was just me. Chris, not everyone knows that it means that, because not everyone in the audience is South African. Remember that. While my content is focused on Africa and heavily on South Africa, this channel does express everything around the world. And my viewers come from New Zealand, Australia, Ireland, UK, Germany, Finland, United States, Canada, all over. So, yes, some of them are South African expats, but many of them are not. Keith Alderson's not a South African expat. I'm not a South African expat. Fleshen's not a South African expat. Hendo is, but a lot of people aren't. Johan says, a month ago, I discovered a monument constructed in 1930 to celebrate 100 years, concrete block with ox hooves and wagon tracks. That's pretty cool. Devet Martaz is back. The Boer and Zulu deserve their own homeland. Good thing. Then it will happen. Faraday says, yes, but we can't say that. It's true. It's true. Well, yeah, not in polite company, you can't say it. Yeah, so it is a holiday in South Africa. And today is the so-called Day of Reconciliation, but people are losing touch with history. When you lose touch with history, you lose something. What happened in Dingane's kraal was horribly wrong. And when he sent his impies to slaughter and murder women and children and the elderly and infirm, that was particularly gruesome. Geopolitically, one can understand why he did it. He wanted to send a message, and he wanted to stop the inflow of immigrants. Should we say even illegal immigrants? The Boers were illegal immigrants into Zulu domain. But Dingane, in a duplicitous manner, welcomed them and said, well, I'll use them to my advantage. I don't want to waste my warriors going over here, so I would like these cattle. And I'm going to tell them that they were stolen, so I'm going to get these cattle back through them. And they did it. The Boers, in good faith, went and attacked the other group, got the cattle, brought them back, gave them to Dingane, and they all celebrated. But his intent all along was to murder them and to eliminate them, all along. Andres Pretorius Column wasn't going to Zululand on a scouting mission. It wasn't going to Zululand to plant maize. It wasn't going to Zululand to graze its cattle. It was going to Zululand to meet with and destroy Zulu impies. The Zulu impies were not looking for a braai. They weren't looking to celebrate anything or break bread. They were hunting down the Boers and looking for a position on the battlefield that suited them, and they thought they found it, with the Boers with their backs up against a river, so they couldn't escape. But it came out the other way. It was the Zulu who couldn't escape, and Nkombe became Blood River. Folks, it's important to know our history, to know what happened, to know our ancestors. Not to venerate them necessarily, although there's nothing wrong with that on occasion, but to know who they were, what they went through, how they struggled. For Americans, this is particularly challenging, as many Americans are so mixed that they, Irish, Italian, how can you be Irish and Italian? Well, you can be. Just mix, someone knocks boots, fertilized egg, boom, out pops a baby. That's how it happens. But Americans, through 3 centuries of immigration, have become a very mutt sort of population. White. Only a handful of Americans recognize their cultural heritage, the Amish being some of them. Oh my goodness, are we buffering again? This is unbelievable. Oh my goodness. I'm really getting pissed off about this. Oh, come on. This is the slowest speed test I've ever seen. I have to wait till it finishes the download. Here we go. No, it says I got plenty. It says I got plenty, but I don't have plenty. Maybe it's just me buffering. Could just me be buffering. Let me see if it's just me. Oh, boy. Okay, it's just me then. Okay. All right. Oh, boy. Sorry, guys. Message held for review. Message held for review. What's going on over here? I'm looking over here. I got a bunch of messages held for review. A lot of messages held for review. What are you guys doing? Putting some profanity in there? All right, so no buffering. Video is good. Okay, no, it's just me. It's just me. Okay. This is YouTube. It wasn't my provider. I was about ready to drive all the way to my provider and complain. Thank you for telling me the video is good. But at 10 o'clock's the magic witching hour. That's when if I have trouble, I have it. So after we end this, I'll have a news program an hour later. So anyway, the Day of Reconciliation, the Day of the Vow. This is an important day for those of Afrikaner and Boer heritage to recognize what happened. Yeah, one of the comments had that. Yep. Do anyone of you know Kerkenberg, where the rock is where Deborah Retief wrote on the stone a message to her father? No, I've never seen that. Not familiar with that story, Leah Minar. I'm familiar, however, with Johanna van den Beve's story, who survived 16 stab wounds from assegais and then later bore children, survived the Battle of Wienen. Or was it Blaukrans? One of the two. Yeah, horrific stuff. What happens in history should be remembered. We should remember it. I know my history, but I grew up not knowing it. I grew up knowing American history, but not my own family history. There was no effort to share the lore or the history or learn or inculcate the values of our family history. For me, my history is European, overwhelmingly, entirely. It's Northern European overwhelmingly, Scandinavian and Germanic. There's no Italian, there's no Spanish, there's no Hungarian, there's no Finnish, there's no Russian, no Slavic, no Turkish, no North African, no Semitic in me whatsoever. It's all Anglo-Saxon, Germanic, Northern European with Frisian, Dutch, Swedish, German, Scots, Irish, Norse, Danish in my blood, in my history. And so those cultures and that history is especially interesting to me. But I didn't know that growing up. It was lost. So I can attest to what it means to lose your history, to lose touch with your roots, because that's what happened in the American experience to millions and millions and millions of Americans, white and black. We constantly hear the wringing of hands and the gnashing of teeth about how black American heritage was stolen from them. Yep. Well, the nature of America is people come here, they mix into a melting pot, and that heritage is forgotten or abandoned. Because in many cases, it was a heritage people don't want to remember of religious and political persecution in Eastern Europe, of poverty in Ireland, grinding poverty, of overpopulation in Germany and poverty. And people fled that for opportunity in the land of opportunity, America. That's what it was all about. South Africa's history is similar but different in many ways. Similar in the fact that people were seeking opportunity and they were always moving forward and going out. Whether they were black coming down the Rift Valley as the Bantu-speaking people did, pushing aside the Khoisan and others as they encroached on their domain, sometimes mixing with them, but that came much later, not initially. Or it was Europeans arriving in the 17th century and establishing a foothold in the Western Cape and then moving away from authority further and further and further to find their own peace and freedom to worship and live in their own right in a place they could call their own. Many similarities. It doesn't matter whether you're black or white. They all colonized South Africa. It's the nature of humanity. It's the story of humanness. We are a colonizing people, Homo sapiens. Black, white, brown, yellow, it does not matter. And when one recognizes that, then one can come to grips with the reality of history and deal with it objectively. There are many things to be ashamed of in the history of the Afrikaner Boer. There are many things to be ashamed of in the history of the Xhosa, the Zulu. But there are also many things to be proud of in the history of all these groups. And the reality is they all live in the same place. And they must learn to live together. Or at least live peacefully apart, like Oranje. Mandela said nothing about the actual massacres that took place after the Battle of Blood River. No, he didn't, Meerkat. But I just did, didn't I? I just talked about Wienen and Blaukrans and the murder of innocents. Children, women, pregnant women, butchered, assegais, jabbed into their stomachs. Horrific, horrific stuff. Who goes and kills women and children? Well, I understand why Dingane did it. He was a bloodthirsty tyrant who didn't want this invasion of these other people there. Exactly, Meerkat. Deal with the past maturely, like an adult. You know, we talk about slavery, and slavery is being blamed on white Americans and Europeans, but they didn't invent slavery. Slavery existed long before European nations existed, long before European empires, long before colonialism from Europe. The colonialism from Africa predates it by thousands of years, and slavery in Africa predates it by thousands of years. Slavery in the Middle East predates European empires by thousands of years. The Greeks and Romans had slaves. The Helots were slaves. They were soldiers who fought for Sparta, the Helots. The Byzantine Empire had the Janissaries, who were essentially slaves. The Persian Empire used slaves. The list goes on and on. Asia, they had slaves. And many people still have slaves today. Not legally, but they have them. To blame America for slavery is a racist notion perpetrated by black supremacists and white leftists. And the same thing in South Africa. The narrative that's often told today is that the only reason that the Trekboers left the Cape is because they wanted to maintain the institution of slavery. There is a degree of truth in that, but claiming it's the only reason is a lie. Most of the Voortrekkers had no slaves. The Khoisan traveled with them were not slaves, although that is the rewriting of history today. Yep. Anyway, so folks, happy or sacred 16th of December, Geloftedag for South Africans. I want to thank you all for being here with me. Thank you for the super chats, and we're going to wrap it up here because I have a news program to do in 1 hour from now. So I also want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas, and I hope that those of you in the Highveld in South Africa and down on the East Coast are no longer suffering from the oppressive heat that has been hitting South Africa the past few days. God bless, Merry Christmas, and I'll see you all right back here, hopefully, in less than an hour for the news on Monday, December 16th, 2024. Geloftedag. God bless and be safe. Thank you so much. I do appreciate your support for the channel and your patronage.